And cheers. Welcome to
Creative happy hour
Where We Get Drunk.
on the creative possibilities.
Oh, yes, we do. With you guys, our creative biatches. So today I'm drinking a J Pinot Gris because
Mhm.
I'm trying to see everything not in black and white, but more in grayscale tones. Because as
Mm.
we talk about life after the pandemic, and you are
Yeah.
drinking the Castillo red wine, that is your house red wine. Your home is your castle right now in quarantine. And,
Yep.
and it's a good predictable thing, unlike what our life is like right now. You've got some predictability going on, and
Yes. I know I can count on the El Castillo.
right, right. Okay, well, let's taste, even though we know what we're going to be tasting, because I'm having this is my house wine too. But cheers to you. Let's taste our wines, and we can discuss before we talk about our subject today.
Hmm. Exactly the same as it was yesterday. I love it.
Much needed, much needed. This is great. This is kind of a it's a nice white that's it's not very light. It's a heavier white, which is very nice. It's got some citrus to it. It's got some butteriness to it, even though it's a Pinot Gris. It has a little bit of that Chardonnay edge. It's got a little whatever. But what are we talking about today, Micah?
We're talking about life after the pandemic, assuming we have one.
Exactly. I know. It's hard to imagine that we're going to have a life after this, but we are.
Yeah.
We're going to tell you guys how to make the best of your creative life, your creative plans for after the pandemic so that you can set yourselves up for this new world that we're going to be entering into. And I don't think it's too much to say that we're going to be entering into a whole new kind of
Mm.
world. I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff that is going to change. And we're going to talk about what those things are in this episode. So cheers
Mhm.
to you. Let's enjoy
Cheers.
our wines. My J Pinot Gris, your Castillo. Mm,
Mm.
oh baby, that was much much needed after today.
Yeah, we needed that.
So much, so much. So what I was looking at a quote from the I think he's Danish. Kierkegaard, is he Danish?
Kierkegaard. Yeah, I love Kierkegaard.
Right? I knew you would. I knew that's like
He was
your
a
jam.
philosopher, but he was also pretty religious too.
Yes, he was actually pretty religious. Well, the interesting thing about him is that he had this interesting theory about how you look at things. So that life can only
Mm.
be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And I thought that was a really
Mhm.
cool quote that actually kind of serves us really well right now because I feel like we have a hard time imagining what's going to be on the other side. And I feel like the more thought we devote to thinking about what life's gonna be like after this, I think the better off we're gonna be, don't you?
Yeah, and I also think, you know, not so much thinking about what it's gonna be like, but planning what it's gonna be like, or at
Absolutely.
least having some, because I think we were talking about today about being reflective about why we're doing what why we've been living in a rush or
Mhm.
why we've been living on full throttle and, living day-to-day life in this crazy rat race kind of way. And I don't know that everybody's doing that, but a lot of people are doing it. And I know in the
Oh,
Bay
yeah.
Area, in order to survive,
Mhm.
you kind of have to hit the pavement pretty hard.
Totally,
And
totally, and I think that having the opportunity to slow down, allows us to be more reflective, and that's
yeah,
actually crucial. You can't go through something like this and not be reflective, and if you are, you're missing an opportunity to kind
yeah.
of analyze what's going on and to really come out of this better than we were. This is an opportunity for all of us, like, when you slow down, all of a sudden you're like, "Okay, what actually matters to me?" And
Yeah.
start to make that kind of a list. I mean, I would even, you know me, I'm a big list writer. And I think that writing down those things that are crucial, those things that you enjoy, the things that you miss versus those that frankly you really didn't care that much about or that you thought you cared about, but that you don't. I think that's a majorly important exercise for us all to be doing.
Yeah, and I also think, I've been kind of tapping back into cooking meals that last multiple days
Well, me too.
or,
I even
making
realize I
big
hate cooking.
soups.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always cooked. I
Mhm.
I mean, I've always been a cooker, like I
Cooker.
cooker. Yeah, but I mean, I've always cooked dinner for myself and my daughter and cooked
Mhm.
breakfast, those kind of things. But doing things in like a little bit more of a quality quantity way
Mhm.
where where I have food for multiple days that I've made at home and just slowing things down. And we have an episode on
Well, yeah. Yep, we have
slow
the slow.
creativity.
Yep, and that's a
And
really good episode actually for people to be looking at right now, 'cause if not now, when? Really, to be able to give yourself that slow movement, and actually a lot of the things of what I've kind of gathered are going to be after this epidemic, I think are things that are more in line with the slow movement.
Mhm.
You and I were discussing earlier, and we'll bring this back up more specifically, but about how things are going to go back to being more local and more intentional and more, kind of thinking of the value and the connections that matter and how you explore those, and a return to the organic and, all of that stuff. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but we think it's a really big opportunity for creatives to kind of figure out the next step, with intention, instead of being running around with a chicken, like a chicken with your head cut off, and being doing creativity in a reactive way. I mean, so many times we're like, oh my God, I just want to get this done. And you feel like you rush it, or you feel like you're actively trying to be creative as a break to your crazy life. And that's not
Mhm.
what's going on right now if we're lucky. And that's something that we can, discuss a little further. And the cooking's the same way. Like, we've gotten so much more intentional because now that going to the supermarket is such a huge ordeal. And you were saying
Yeah,
something
it's an
super,
ordeal.
yeah, you were
You
saying something
sometimes you
really
have to stand
fascinating.
in line for an hour.
Yeah. Can you kind of tell our listeners, you were talking about how it's more like it used to be that you're going out hunting and that you have to be ready for disappointment, which is not something that we've had in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, that's what something I grew up in poverty, so, not having access to things was something that I'm familiar with.
Mhm.
I'm Of course, in my adult life, I've kind of made it so that I'm less familiar with it on that level. But I think this, for some people, it's the first time that they're going out to they're like, oh, we're so used to going out to the supermarket and wanting to get this, that, and the other, and just having complete and total access to it. And
Oh,
now, I stood in line at Trader Joe's for an hour a couple weeks ago, and I was watching people leave the store with toilet paper, and I was going to hopefully get toilet paper. And I went into the store and it was all gone, and,
what a
among other things.
disappointment.
So
Yeah.
you go in and you think that you're going to get this, that, and the other,
Mhm.
and you really don't know. And it is kind of like hunting. You go out hunting and you're going to eat what you kill,
Yeah.
and you don't know if you're going to kill anything that day.
So that whole thing you were talking about with the disappointment of going to the supermarket
Yeah,
and equating it with hunting, that you get what you get and you kind of don't get
yeah,
upset because you're pursuing something but not necessarily getting it. I think that a lot of creatives are really used to that sort of a thing,
yeah,
because when you're an artist and you're trying to express a certain thing in your work, yet it never quite materializes, or you're a writer and you're having writer's block and you expected to write a whole chapter and that just didn't happen. I think that those are
yeah,
things that, as creatives, we do have a little bit more experience with it than some
yeah,
people have. So we're better. So we should look at that in that way, even though creatives are we're very vulnerable, financially, because whenever the shit hits the fan in a situation like this, creatives are kind of the first to lose their jobs, lose their patrons, lose their avenues for showing their work,
mhm.
so, but we also have these talents of, being able to bounce back and being able to brainstorm, being able to express things in different ways. So this whole episode is about having creatives see the opportunities that are going to be opening up for them, and also to be trying to not just see obstacles, but to see avenues of possibility.
Yeah, and tap into those those negotiating types of characteristics that you're constantly doing year round. You're constantly negotiating with time
Yeah.
to do a creative project, or negotiating financially, or I feel like creatives are often doing that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
it's one of our strengths. I mean, if you're
Absolutely.
surviving as a creative person, then you already have that muscle for being able to negotiate uncertainty.
Yes. 100.
And we were also talking about uncertainty, that that we've had this we've been living under this premise, which is really an illusion, that we have certainty, and we've just all been proven
We just
wrong, that
can't.
we
That's
don't
the thing.
have any certainty.
Right, like, we kind of feel like it's our God-given right that we do X, Y, and Z. We put in this work, we put
Yeah.
in these we do these benchmarks, we do all this stuff, and we think that that means that we're going to succeed automatically, and we think that that means that we've gained the reward that, "Oh, I
Mhm.
did this, therefore that." And I think that that chain of causality has ended, and
Mm,
I believe that I think that the whole chain of supply and demand and the whole chain of business processes is going to be interrupted for a time. So I think that the
mhm,
whole world is going to be this for a while. So I think that we need to learn to expect different things. And that doesn't mean to expect that all of us are going to starve forever. Like we need to, how do we figure out how to make the best of this as creatives? So, what are some of the things that we know almost for a fact or that we've kind of thought about? What are some of the things that are not going to go back to normal for a long, long time after this pandemic?
well, I mean, one is large group gatherings.
100%, right?
Yeah.
100%. So many artists really, if you think about it, artists think, "Oh, I'm an introvert, and this and that," but you're not.
Mhm,
Like, if you are a visual artist, you are counting on studio visits at the very least, but gallery shows for your livelihood. You're counting on these gatherings.
mhm,
If you're a creative entrepreneur, you're counting on, kind of these networking events. You're counting on
mhm,
trade shows. You're counting on conferences. And, if you're a musician, you're counting on having these big gatherings. And so I think that we really need to realize that like instead of crying and saying, "Oh my god, I wish that that would come back to normal right away," I don't think it's going to. So I think we need to see the benefit to having a smaller
mhm,
audience that's maybe getting more value out of what you're giving them. So let's make things more experiential for a smaller number of people. And let's also see how we can provide a virtual experience that's going to be that much value added that we can charge
mhm,
for it. I think we need to start to see the value of what we're doing and what we're charging for. Not just the value is not just the piece of art that's right there right now. It's
mhm,
everything that came before it and everything that engenders, you
mhm.
know?
Well, I've been seeing a lot of people, I mean, like my friend Seth just did some kind of comedy show where his wife is involved in she works with the nurses union. And so they did an event to raise money for nurses on the front lines. And so, now's the time. I mean, that's a great opportunity to be able to put your creative talent out there, your art, whatever it is, your writing, your comedy, and do something to right in the peak of when everybody's like, "Oh, I want to help. I want to be part of the right thing." So, using your creative skills to raise money for something you believe in.
Yeah.
And it gives you practice on organizing something online and raising money.
Exactly, yeah, like
And
raising
there's
money for yourself, like, as a creative, like, we
Yeah,
always are raising money for others. I
yeah,
think that, so many are doing that, that's a wonderful piece of the puzzle, but let's raise money for ourselves. I think that for many of us,
yeah,
raising money or making money with our creativity is the last piece of the puzzle for us to figure out, and I think that now is the time for us to be like, "Okay, I have all these other tools at my disposition." Maybe you've learned to be online more, maybe you've learned to upload your stuff to different platforms. And now's the time to be like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to put myself on Patreon? Am I going to be charging for, music,
yeah,
comedy? Let's figure that out. I think that that's a really big thing. The other thing being is that since everybody's rushing in and going online, we had the episode recently about how to start a podcast. We've talked about everybody getting online, but yes, there's going to be more noise out there for a time, but there are also less distractions out there in terms of going to big events that are going to be taking up all the noise. So you need to learn how to provide something of quality that is going to get attention for the right reasons. So
yeah,
people think they can throw it up there and that it's automatically going to get an audience, and that's definitely not, that's not the case, and that never will be the case, and now more than ever it's not the case. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, I can see where it's easy to get into the mindset of, you know, don't spend money. We have to be, we have to have self-preservation. We have to, everything's in a holding pattern and
Mhm.
people aren't spending money right now. But I actually think that's untrue. I actually think that people want more than ever to go back to some normal economic,
Yeah.
means. And I
Mhm.
mean, even me who not working right now, I have applied for unemployment for the first time in my life and I have received zero money, and I don't even
So
know if
far,
I will
so far.
receive any money. It's like this mystery,
It's
you
the
know,
unknown that we were talking about last
you
time.
don't even really know.
Mhm.
But, I was on Instagram and I was seeing, the local being Petaluma, the farmer, Mimi at Windrush Farms. She
Mhm.
posted some beautiful pictures of her, naturally dyed yarn. And of course, my neighbor lives down the, or my cousin's wife lives down the street. And I'm like, hey, do you think you could score me some of that yarn and I could pay Mimi? And, you know, even me, who I have no business spending money right now, I want to spend money on things that matter.
Yeah.
I want to spend money with people that I know have quality products and I want to support them. You know what I mean? Like
Well, that's the other
people
thing that's happening. I mean, I think more
people
and more
do
we
want to
feel like
spend money.
we wanna but we wanna support local
Yeah.
businesses and businesses that are actually meaningful for us. I think that
Yeah.
is different. We're hesitating now. I mean, I've filled my shopping cart, my virtual shopping cart on Gap and Old Navy 1,000 times, and have I pulled the trigger? I have not. But the thing that does make me pull the trigger is supporting that local restaurant. Or I've seen some works of art. There's actually an artist, that we know that we went to one of their shows before the whole thing happened, and she's not somebody that I'm not friends with, but I've been following her and she's been doing a painting a day. And let me tell you, the
Oh, nice.
desire to buy one of those paintings, even though it's not on my budget right now, but that's the strongest need or desire for
Mhm.
me right now, is to support the artists and the local businesses. And I think so many people are feeling that. And that's
Yeah.
something that really, as an artist or a creative, you should capitalize on that. It's that whole local thing, really maybe become part of a local community if you're not yet part of a tight knit local community. You
Mhm.
should look into that. And I think that community is going to be another thing that becomes so much more crucial after this. People
Mhm.
are realizing how important community has been for them. I mean,
Mhm.
we were talking about happy hour. I mean, before this happened, you and I were real proponents of the happy hour. But
Yeah.
how many of you guys out there who are working full time, raising kids, trying to be creative? I mean, how many happy hours did you have time to do before? And how many happy hours have you done now on Zoom or FaceTime or whatever since the pandemic started? I'll bet that everybody's done at least one. Like, happy hours are a thing.
I've heard that a lot of people are like, "Oh, I had a happy hour with, like, my graduating class. I hadn't
Yes.
talked to them in 30 years. I had a happy hour with." I mean, people are really finding time to reconnect with people that they haven't connected with in a long time, and I think that I mean, we've already talked about this a million times, that we're, huge believers in that happy hour is that place where you do kinda let your guard down,
Yeah.
you let all of the structure go, you have your drink, you have intimate conversation with whoever you're with,
Yeah, it's
and
the
you just
anti-networking. I
enjoy.
mean, yeah, you enjoy it.
Yeah,
It's the
and you enjoy
anti-networking.
it.
It's a much stronger way of bonding with people and of creating community because you're actually letting down that guard. Yeah, doing something you enjoy, having a meaningful conversation and seeing what it
Yeah,
is you can actually do together that's mutually beneficial. It's not a business proposition per se, though it can become that, but that's a more creative and organic way of having things happen. So I think, take advantage of these happy hour formats even before the pandemic, before we're able to get out into the world again. Take advantage of these happy hours. I mean, I've done a few happy hours with people that I absolutely, I know one of them, I know the organizer, for example, and I've been getting on these things. I would never think of doing that as easily in real life. My writing group's also been, you attended one and I hope you attend, future ones.
yeah, I
It
was gonna say that I think now's the time too, if I was thinking about your writing group,
Mhm.
how much fun that was for me. I mean, it was very intimidating because I'm not a writer. I
But
I have the
you had such a great contribution, and I think that you being there made such a difference for people with your
I
experience.
am a big reader and I've done writing in college settings and, in academic settings. However, I have not written anything creative or other than like
I
a
know you
financial
have,
aid. Uh,
or
huh?
I know you have written some things. You've written at the
I've
very
written some things, but
yeah.
mostly that is not something that, I don't identify as a writer
Mhm.
necessarily. But what I was going to say to our viewers and, and anyone listening is how many times did I blow you off on writing group?
Yes.
And, many, many times I've blown you off on writing group. And this time I was like, well, what's the big deal? I don't have anything else going on. There's no
Right.
reason why
Mhm.
I can't join writing group
Mhm.
and I can just see what it's like,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I'm gonna sneeze. I always do that.
You always sneeze. It's wonderful.
I always
That's
sneeze.
a
I
good
don't know what it is.
that's a
But
good thing that remains stable in this whole thing.
there you go. Another anchor to
Yeah.
the uncertainty anchor. But I think,
Yeah.
that was such a good idea. And um, I felt like my writing exercise was kind of shitty, but I definitely felt challenged in
Yeah.
a way that I hadn't challenged myself before.
Right, it's something completely new, it's an opportunity to just participate in things, and I think that that's a wonderful lesson. So many of my friends like, one of the other women in the writing group, who was joining us from Virginia, so that was the nice thing, you can create a close community, that doesn't need to be geographically based, so,
Right.
you can create these close relationships with people that you've never met in person, and we've seen that happening in
Yeah.
social media, like, as we've grown our platform with Creative Happy Hour, we have a few people that we really consider to be our online friends, and
Right.
that's something that I would have had a hard time imagining in the past, but now it's starting to be our reality. But one of our Virginia people was saying how she was making quarantine her bitch, and she was going to be doing all these things. So she had done a painting class, she'd done a language class, she was learning
Yeah.
German, and she had done the writing group, and she's really enjoying this, and I think that's a really great opportunity. But I would kind of caution all of you who are doing a million different things, maybe as we start to get a date for when normalcy or quasi normalcy or the new normal will begin, to maybe start to focus and figure out what you want to be and what you want to do as we come out the other end. It would be a shame to have gone through this whole gestation period that we've been describing this as and come out without something more. I mean, I hate to think that there's not more meaning behind it, and that, we come through this being just the same would be a real tragedy, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think you can even if you're not even being self-conscious
Yeah,
or conscious, I don't think there's any way to come to the other side of it and be the same. I mean,
right,
but you want to have some say in how you've changed or how you've responded to the situation. I mean, I
right.
think, I was talking to you about just how I've had to, I call it sit on my hands, on certain occasions, just, certain group texts that I've had to have self preservation about and standing in lines and, all of these like exercising these muscles
Yeah.
of choosing another way,
Absolutely. Well, I
like,
think a pandemic or this whole period of difficulty, I think it forces this radical self analysis in a way as a society and as a person. You start to see like how you are reacting to things. This whole pandemic holds a mirror up to us as a society. So we've seen kind of where we fail as a society or as a country or as a government. And then we'll see where we actually have our strength and where we've been banding together on things or where we've been.
yeah, it reveals our weaknesses and our strengths.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that just having that analysis and looking at ourselves and giving ourselves like a good look, I think that's a really useful exercise that is time well spent, as we come out of this. Because, I, for one, have been thinking, okay, what do I need to get done? And I've almost had this feeling of, I don't want this whole quarantine to be over too soon. Sorry, I apologize to everybody if my wishes are, you know, but I've been feeling that I need to get this done, that done, because it's
Speak for
important.
yourself, you crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you kind of feel like you don't want it to be all for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want it to be all for nothing. And I think that's a really important thought to have is, okay, guys, what if this was all for nothing? What if we went through this and, this was all for nothing? You come out exactly the same. And you've gone through all of this sacrifice, all of this stuff, but you've not gone through the reflection. You just watched a shit ton of Netflix. Well, to me, that's not what a creative does, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah,
that
I I did watch some Netflix last night, but it
I
has
get it.
not been
You'd be a monster
predominant.
if you didn't.
No, it hasn't been a predominant activity for me.
Mhm.
I have been trying to finish books that I have all these different books I'm reading. I've been trying to finish those. Just so many things that have been a priority
Mhm.
as far as they're enjoyable projects. They're not, I'm not dreading them.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think just indulging the constant consumption of entertainment,
Mhm.
that is not something that is ultimately, I think, going to be in your best interest as far as coming out on the other side with some level of, ready to go back to work and ready to participate on a higher level. I think,
Right, and I don't
um,
think, like so back to work is one of those goals that most people have in terms of back to work, in terms of being productive and making money, always nice. But I think that also, that whole back to work thing is gonna look so different that I think
mm,
it's an opportunity to shape, okay, what if I were able to finally make that jump, from doing the mindless job to doing something that means more to me or whatever, and I think that we're all having this reflection. The other interesting thing I was thinking was we were talking about how a lot of people were going through this in different ways. Some
mm.
people are feeling kind of almost good about it, almost cheerful, almost, oh my God, this is the
Well,
opportunity. Yeah,
introverts are like, this is culturally acceptable for me to be antisocial.
that
So
is very, yeah.
introverts are kind of thriving right now.
Some of them are, except I feel like they're not being challenged. I think that's kind of dangerous
Yeah.
for the introvert who's like, "This is great. This is my world. This is my people." Do you want a world like that? I think objectively, if you think about it, no, you don't want it to be that extreme. But I think the other really interesting thing is all the people who are being depressed right now, or who are kind of
Mm,
going into these feelings of despair. I think that the good side effect of this is that we're seeing that all of the mental health stuff and all of the psychological differences that we might have, especially as creatives have, or people who think a little bit more deeply, I think that those things are being taken into account a lot more. And
mm,
I think they're becoming more part of the dialogue,
mm,
kind of the
mhm.
national or news cycle dialogue. I think that, psychological issues are coming to the forefront. And I think that,
Yeah.
well, yeah, right. But I think that workplaces are going to start to honor that a lot more. I think they're going to start to honor the work life balance a lot more, because after people have been at home with loved ones doing the things they care about, they're going to be pissed when they go back to work and their life accelerates again to be meaningless once more. Like, that's not going to go over well, I don't think. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I was telling my boss, like, after we'd only been like in this shelter in place for about a week,
mhm,
and our practice is so busy, and I'm super grateful, and I kind of miss that exciting busy vibe. But, part of me was like, why are we doing it at this accelerated, like, full throttle level? Like,
mhm.
why? This isn't, I mean, it is not something that we have to do at this level. We're
No.
just choosing to respond to it at this level, and encouraging it to be this way. And so I guess my question is like, how can we somewhat restructure it and still care for people and respond to the need, but do it in a way that's more sustainable for
Yeah.
everyone involved?
Yeah. I think
Instead
sustainability.
of like, oh my
Yeah.
God, running around, not drinking water, not going to the bathroom, and like,
Mhm.
you know, working 10 hours on your feet and just like, and you still feel like you haven't accomplished,
Yeah.
still haven't met the
Yeah,
need.
I think the work-life balance is gonna be major, and I think that any
Yeah.
creative who can think of an industry where they can help to provide work-life balance, or where they can step into a job where they have that kind of balance, or
Mhm.
encourage that sort of a shift in workplace, the way things work, I think that's crucial. It's I think that we still have, and we talked about this at one point when we were talking about productivity and doing things, about how we have this puritanical thing of like clocking in and the number of hours is good. Like, the more hours you spend, the better that is. And that's not true anymore. And, you and I were discussing the whole 4-hour work week. Brian Holiday, right? Is that him? Holiday or Fair? No,
It
Holiday. Yeah,
No, Tim Ferriss is the 4-hour work
Tim
week.
Ferriss, yeah, and but
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
not
and it's like work smart, not don't work more smart,
yeah.
I mean, it like and even in my business where it is kind of an hourly where you're seeing, you're in a clinical environment and you're seeing patients by the hour and I
But we
work
had
as an
discussed
hourly person.
yeah, but we had discussed how that could be transformed to have more value added and more interesting cases that would charge more and be much more interesting for everyone involved, and
Yeah,
other offices can do the busy work, but you guys can be designing the smiles, as you were saying. You can do things that use more creativity and that use more vision,
yeah.
transform
Be more
something.
thoughtful about
Yeah,
how you plan it out and not just agree to these old terms of how things go, I mean, I think that's really what I mean, I feel like everyone's gonna be doing. I mean, you were even talking about your husband and traveling,
yeah,
traveling for
yeah.
meetings,
Mhm.
and he's doing just fine having
He's doing what he
meetings on
could.
the computer.
Yeah, exactly. He fought me so much when I was saying, "Oh, I don't think this travel is necessary," and I don't think I would love a world where we travel just for travel that's fun, that's meaningful, that actually makes a difference in our lives,
Yeah,
not for the travel where you're going to some corporate hotel because you need to go sit in meetings and you don't even know where you are. If you're gonna do that, sit in a conference room and have a video chat. I cannot imagine how you're gonna be building more meaningful
yeah,
connection with something like that. You know? So if anything, maybe the travel industry is gonna change where it's like, listen, we understand that all these massive conference centers aren't exactly what we need. How do we transform that into spaces that are going to be more useful, that we can use in a more creative way so that we can create this balance for all of our employees? We've
yeah,
said this before where when you engage the creativity and you engage like thinking more about things and you engage the balance, your people are going to be so much more, they're going to be doing more value, they're going to be adding to you, they're going to be working harder actually in the times that
mhm,
they are working, and they're going to feel like they understand that they're a part of a bigger whole that actually contributes. And I think that's where we are, where it's like, okay, how are you going to contribute after this whole pandemic kind of chills out? And also, I think keeping in mind the fact that we're going to be going through waves of stuff. So you need to be very,
yeah. We are. You're gonna have to be. Yeah, you're gonna have to be resilient. You're gonna have to be flexible.
yes,
You're gonna have to just be prepared to have things be a little bit more roller coastery.
very much so.
And yeah, I just think that for myself, I've noticed that I feel like I really like the idea of, we were talking earlier about being thoughtful about what's essential and what's not essential and just feeling like I don't want to run at that pace anymore. I would rather have more time to be creative and work on things that really matter to me
Mhm.
than race around and try to prove to everybody that I'm a good mom or I'm a good employee and at the end of the day, maybe I can restructure it so that I'm able to do that financially,
Yeah,
but also just thinking outside of the box. Like maybe you don't figure it out today, but
yeah,
playing around with
yes,
those ideas, like how could it
absolutely.
look in a different way? And I think a lot of businesses, because they were forced to figure out the technology part. Maybe they had been, dabbling in it before, but
Mhm.
all of a sudden, that
Well,
was the only way you were going to have a meeting.
right, like every single school has had to learn it within a
Distance
weeks
learning. Yeah.
that distance learning, and so distance learning is this huge new business that had been kind of ramping up, but now I think business learning
Mhm.
is gonna become one of the biggest industries, and I think that we're gonna see so many businesses kind of failing because they were the old way of doing things and they were counting on things that aren't gonna matter anymore, and we're gonna have a
Yeah.
ton of new startups, and I think that as creatives, we can add value to those startups, but here's the little caveat that I have is that all of this thinking about the possibilities and thinking about the future and thinking about how we're going to be,
Creative
that's a
possibilities.
and the creative possibilities, that is a great thing, but I think that now is the time where we need to actually have some follow through, and that we need to start
Mm.
thinking about like what are the few things that are the most important to me, not every single creative possibility that we have, but let's pick a couple, and how am I going to actually follow through, how am I actually going to do something concrete out of this so that I
Mhm,
can come out of
mhm,
this? Because for me, it's like, okay, creativity is great and I love being creative, but how can I create a concrete creative expression that actually is the result of all of this time that we've been suffering
mhm.
through? And, how can we actually do something that's going to have some kind of meaning and it's going to impact people as we go forward? I think that's a need that many of us are having. And I think that, let's stop with a pie in the sky dream. Like, we know things are going to be different. We know that we do have
Mm.
more power and more control over what we do and how we react to things. So, what are you going to do? Do something.
Yeah.
Micah's like, that's fucking stressful, bitch.
No, it just reminds me of, I think that this time reminds me of last year when I had to go in for the mammogram. Did I
Mhm.
tell you this
Yeah.
story? And
Well,
then
you can
I
tell
had to
everybody
go
else's story. You told me, but not everybody else. So let's go.
they had to do the diagnostic mammogram because they saw something weird. So I had to go in for the more like the extra smashy version. It was like smash times 1,000 and where
Smash
they
10,000.
yeah, the smash 10,000 boob exam. And so I go in and they do well, she shows me on the thing, "This is the thing we're looking at. We wanna take a closer look." So
Your
they
boob.
take your
This
boob
is
in
the
the
close up of
thing,
your yeah.
and then she said, "Okay, I'm gonna send the images to the radiologist, and then we'll give you some kind of information today, like, if we find something."
I should fucking
And
hope
I'm
so.
like, "Fuck, seriously? Like, I don't even have time to, like, wait f like, have some drinks and wait a couple days for my results?"
Mm-mm.
So I'm sitting there and I'm waiting for her to send everything to the radiologist. And I have a conversation with myself. And I said, okay, self, let's assume that, if everything's fine, everything's fine. But
Mhm.
if everything's not fine, what's the first thing you're going to do?
What gonna do? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is kind of what you're asking us
Yeah.
on this. It's the same kind of thing. I'm sitting there and I go, number one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to quit my job today. I'm going to call, if I have breast cancer,
Yeah.
I'm calling the office and I'm quitting.
Mhm.
And
See?
then the second thing I'm doing is I'm calling my boyfriend Paul and I'm telling him to meet me at the bar. And and then I didn't know, but I
There's
think
not much beyond the bar, but whatever. That was a good start, god damn
but
it.
the thing for me was when you are faced with something like that,
Yeah.
you really know what something means to you or how
Yeah.
badly it
Oh,
bothers you
or how
when
badly you want it, or how badly you wanna
when
do
it's
it.
yeah, when it's pressed up against something more serious, and all of a sudden you're just like, "Okay, well, now I'm clear."
Yeah, so let's
Like,
try a crazy one. Let's try world pandemic shuts down everything. Everybody has to stay at home. What would you do? Oh my god, that actually happened. So
"Oh my god, that actually happened." So, like, I think, you kinda have to sit there like I did, and luckily they came
yeah,
back and it was fine for now, but, I think everybody kinda has to sit there and
yeah,
say, "Okay,
just a
we're in a
great
global
exercise.
pandemic. What's the most important thing to
Yeah,
you?
what's important to me?
And
I
what
would
are
do
you
the
not gonna
opposite.
participate in anymore?"
Exactly, and I would kind of do the opposite one. So when at one point, I was moving out of California, I was going to Virginia, and I was gonna open a store and do this creative space and all this
Mm,
crap. And I thought to myself, before I actually, like, invested in opening the
mhm,
store and dropping I was like, "Okay, if I won the lottery tomorrow, would I
mm.
still open this store?" And my answer at the time, now it's like, "Fuck no." But my answer at the time was, yes, I would. I would still wanna do that to see what was I needed to do that. That was something that needed to happen.
That's part of your process you'd wanted
Just
to do for a
I
long
need
time.
a long that had always been a little dream to have a shop, and I needed to see it through. Now it's my nightmare, but I had, a good 5 years, 6 years where I had a store and it worked, and I worked at it every day, and that was my thing, and now it's out of my system thoroughly, thoroughly. Maybe not 100%, 99% out. But I loved the question of being like, "Okay, if I were told I won the lottery, would I still do it? If I were told I was dying tomorrow, what would I do?" And that's something that I've asked a
Yeah.
lot of people before, like, "What would you do?" One of my friends is like, "I would quit my job and move to Nicaragua and sit in the lake," and I was like, "That's very cute." I suspect I'm such a workaholic. I'm like, I think I would keep trying to push everything through even faster, and that's a great answer to know that you have. You know what I mean?
Well, it helps you get clear, and I
Yeah.
guess what we're saying is we're in a very serious, um, public health crisis,
Mhm.
financial crisis.
Yes.
We're in like a full scale, like freak out crisis, like end of the world kind of shit right now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty
Drama.
freaking crazy.
It's a little Shakespearean, but I think this is the time,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is
If
like,
not now, when? I mean, Jesus.
yeah,
Yeah,
it just think about like, okay, do I need to be doing this? Is this the best use of my time? And if it's not, what the hell do I want to do?
exactly. And
And
I think
start
that
taking
that's
steps to make that happen.
100%. And I think that that's kind of maybe the last thing that we'll bring up is that this thing has bonded a lot of us. It has made us kind of understand the other sides because we've
Yeah.
had nothing to do other than look at how everybody's feeling about things and to share memes together and to share this humor. But I think that coming out of this, we're going to see that being a little bit unique is okay. Thinking that like everybody is entitled to their own way of dealing with things.
Mhm,
Absolutely. But you just need to know that, okay, yes, to each their own, to each reacting the way that they will or would. But
mhm,
for yourself personally, do yourself a favor and do the things that you need to do to make yourself happy. Nobody's judging you. They don't have freaking time. They're too worried about finding toilet paper at Safeway. Do the things that matter to you, but do them right and do them the whole way. Like line yourself up for success. So right now, like hopefully the last few weeks or months of quarantine, how can you set yourself up to be that new thing when you come out of this? Like, is it going to be education? Is it going to be training? Is it going to be doing the work that's the foundation for what it is you're going to do? You know, do those things, get yourself
mhm.
set up so that you can kind of hit the ground running once we're into the new normal, which is probably going to be kind of this fits and starts kind of bizarre normal. Um, but learn how to, and I would say learn how to be flexible. See, as Micah stretches,
I'm
learn to be
stretching.
flexible. Perfect timing.
I know. I did that. That was interpretive
That was so
dancing.
good. That was so good. Be flexible. I love it. So yeah, that's it. Anything else to add to our little, begging people to do something exciting so we have something to watch when all this is over?
Yeah, I mean, I wanna see some cool shit.
So do
I'm
I.
ready to,
Honestly,
like,
I want to see some cool shit is all I have to
I wanna
say.
see some cool shit.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, with that, my dears, we will say thank you for joining us. Did you finish your drink? Did it? No, you didn't. We drank almost nothing. When we're together in person, we drink way more. That is
Oh,
where
yeah, I'm, like,
the virtual
waiting
happy
all
hour.
day to get that.
See,
Now I just drink all day. No, I'm just kidding.
fails us. This fails us. Like virtually, we don't drink as much. I think that's just my thing. Let us know. Comment below if you drink more, less, whatever. I don't know.
It's true. I drink less virtually.
Right? Right.
Interesting.
I virtually drink less.
I virtually drink less virtually.
Virtually. Okay, you guys.
Alright,
Cheers to you, and we will
cheers.
see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.